Hello and welcome to Freewheeling, here with a fascinating chapter in the long and inspirational story of the history of music. Since the early days of rock music, record label executives held on to the old conventional order of music that could be produced, while the artist's new ideas bubbled beneath the surface. These tensions would develop into astonishing art rock when musicians could no longer conform, pushing beyond the traditional pop song format by rock's most original thinkers. Imagine walking down a street where you look up to see Syd Barrett smiling at you from a balcony surrounded by his Pink Floyd bandmates. You walk a little further down the street to find Justin Hayward sitting in a park writing some of the lyrics in a notebook for the next Moody Blues song. As you turn the corner, you hear Procol Harum's Gary Brooker playing a Bach-inspired organ melody that drifts out the window down a busy street. Later, you drop by a smoky Soho club where everyone's buzzing about Jim Morrison's provocative performance back in LA, while the pretty things test their latest classical rock fusion. And just around the corner, the Beatles are heading into Abbey Road Studios, where they are crafting a sound that will define a generation. It may sound like you're in a dream, but it's just another day in London, 1967, the epicenter of an emerging art rock movement that elevated modern music into uncharted territory. Many of these musicians have something in common. They are former art students. They will use their artistic background to reshape music, painting pictures with words, theatrical elements, and sounds never heard before in modern music. Art schools from my time specialized in old school teaching methods of brutalizing your students with some wild thinking that was off the map. Pete Townsend. England's art schools will inspire some of music's most original thinkers, completely changing the history of music by incorporating abstract lyrics, avant-garde experimentation, orchestras, jazz, and classical with conceptual storytelling and album-length themes. They were pioneers of the idea that rock music could employ complicated and conceptual approaches to music with an artistic statement, without an emphasis on popular music conventions. To find out more about this revolutionary chapter in the long story of music history, let's look at the songs and stories that pioneered the art rock movement in the 1960s and see how it changed the history of music.
Money, we had nothing, our price was even getting lower. Our price was about $40 a night and going down. So we said, let's just do our own material and just do what we believe in and record the music that we want to hear and stand or fall by that.
In 1967, Justin Hayward, who recently joined the Moody Blues, was back home walking through the town he grew up in when he suddenly became aware that he was in front of a park he used to play in with his brother, a medieval manor house in the background. As he watched the past play out in front of his eyes, he sat down with his guitar as these words came to him. Tuesday afternoon. Hayward has described Tuesday Afternoon as a stream of consciousness piece, written in a single sitting. The lyrics convey a sense of wonder and escapism. I'm just thinking to see I'm on my way. Justin Hayward recalls writing Tuesday Afternoon. I was a little hung up with doing tempo changes in the middle of songs. If I got bored, in order to open up another door within the song, I wanted to just go to a different type of mood. In fact, Tuesday Afternoon was the first time we did that. Self-reflections of my mind. It's just the kind of day to leave myself behind. It was just about searching for some kind of enlightenment or some kind of religious or psychedelic experience in life. I didn't really mean it to be taken too seriously, but 6 months later, there it was, our first single in America, Justin Hayward. Mike Pinder explains the album Days of Future Past. Ultimately, it was agreed that the record would be a concept album tracking the day in the life of every man, with original songs relating to different parts of the day performed in chronological order, introduced and interspersed with orchestral music. In 1967, Justin Hayward wrote Nights in White Satin at just 19 years old. The song was inspired by a personal love story. Hayward had received a gift of white satin bedsheets from a former girlfriend, and the imagery stuck with him.
Nights in white satin.
Hayward said of the song, "It was just another song I was writing, and I thought it was very powerful. It was a very personal song, and every note, every word in it means something to me, and I found that a lot of other people have felt that very same way about it." At the end of the song, drummer Graham Edge recites a spoken word poem titled Late Lament.
Bedsitter people look back and lament. Another day's useless energy spent.
The London Festival Orchestra, conducted by Peter Knight, provided the orchestral backing, elevating the song's cinematic atmosphere. Nights in White Satin served as the dramatic conclusion to the album, capturing the emotions of nightfall and reflection. Days of Future Past influenced artists for decades across many genres, and its dreamlike orchestral quality setting a precedent for the expansion of rock music into more sophisticated, conceptual territory.
It's always been a strong part of the group, I think. We've got broad visions as to what we like and what we get inspired by or influenced by. And classical music has always been one of them.
What about modern classical music?
No.
One morning in early 1967, Gary Brooker was idly doodling on a Baroque chord sequence on the piano at his mother's house in Southend when the postman arrived. He received a letter from Keith Reid, the lyricist for his newly formed band Procol Harum. Inside were some suggested words for a song which began,
Skip the light fandango, turns cartwheels across the floor.
Brooker returned to the piano and began fitting the lyrics to the chords he had been playing, and 2 hours later, A Whiter Shade of Pale had been written.
I was feeling kind of seasick.
He later explained, if you trace the chordal element, it does a bar or two of Bach's air on a G string before it veers off. That spark was all it took. I wasn't consciously combining rock with classical, it's just that Bach's music was in me. Brooker admitted that he never bothered to ask the meaning or significance of the title. It was kind of an ambiguous name, and we were writing ambiguous music, he said. He was later pleased to learn that it was Latin for beyond these things.
Turn the wider shade of pale.
Keith Reid was at a party and overheard Procol Harum's manager, Guy Stevens, tell a woman at a party that she had turned a whiter shade of pale. Its unusually elusive and referential lyrics are much more complex than most lyrics of the time. The chorus alludes to Geoffrey Chaucer's The Miller's Tale. Lyricist Keith Reid said, "I'd never read The Miller's Tale in my life. Maybe that's something that I knew subconsciously, but it never was a conscious idea for me to quote from Chaucer."
As the miller told his tale.
Keith Reid describes writing the song in 2008 to Uncut. "I was trying to conjure a mood as much as tell a straightforward girl leaves boy story. With the ceiling flying away and room humming harder, I wanted to paint an image of a scene. I wasn't trying to be mysterious with those images, I was trying to be evocative."
Was humming harder as the ceiling flew away.
I suppose it seems like a decadent scene I'm describing, but I was too young to have experienced any decadence then. I might have been smoking when I conceived it, but not when I wrote. It was influenced by books, not drugs. As the miller told his tale, a likely reference to Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, where the miller's tale is an indecent story about deception and desire. Bach-inspired organ melodies give the song a haunting, timeless quality.
The crowd called out more.
Gary Brooker's emotional vocals make it feel deeply personal, even if the lyrics are abstract. The integration of classical elements into rock music was a pioneering moment. A Whiter Shade of Pale played a pivotal role in elevating rock music into a serious artistic form.
Skip the light fandango. Turn cart.
It was on Revolver that, of course, we have the track Tomorrow Never Knows, which was a great innovation.
In 1966, John Lennon sat cross-legged on the floor of his Weybridge home. A copy of the Psychedelic Experience, a manual based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead by Timothy Leary, open when he stumbled upon a phrase that he adapted into setting them to a droning, hypnotic melody. The result was Tomorrow Never Knows, a track unlike anything the Beatles or rock music itself had ever attempted.
That's me in my Tibetan Book of the Dead period.
The Beatles had begun to treat the recording studio as an instrument in itself, manipulating sound in ways previously unthinkable, a fusion of Eastern mysticism, avant-garde experimentation, and the boundless possibilities of the modern studio. When Revolver arrived in 1966, Tomorrow Never Knows stood as its most radical statement, a song that pointed towards rock's future, blurring the boundaries of raw sounds, music, and art.
This time you get in the middle of the song. I had to laugh myself, you know. Wild, wild, smack on. Well, I just had to laugh.
A year later, with Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the Beatles would push these artistic ambitions even further. A Day in the Life, the album's dramatic closer, emerged as a song in two halves. Lennon's melancholic verses, drawn from disconnected newspaper clippings, and McCartney's upbeat middle section, recalling the energy of his morning routine while in school.
Fell out of bed, dragged a comb across my head.
The two halves, seemingly unrelated, were stitched together by George Martin's orchestral crescendo, a swirling chaotic ascent that mirrored the dreamlike state of the song's protagonist. At its core, A Day in the Life reflected the same artistic ethos that birthed Tomorrow Never Knows, the idea that rock music could be cinematic, surreal, and unconstrained by traditional pop music. The final chord, an earth-shaking E major, played simultaneously on multiple pianos, lingered for nearly a minute, stretching the limits of recorded sound. It was a fitting farewell to the album's psychedelic wonderland, marking a moment when pop music and high art became one. By presenting the album as a performance by a fictional band, the Beatles created an immersive experience, complete with orchestral arrangements, psychedelic production, and a concept that redefined the album format. Sgt. Pepper was a response to the Beach Boys' rock symphony Pet Sounds, with songs like God Only Knows showcasing emotionally profound orchestral pop. Brian Wilson used intricate harmonies, unconventional instruments with bicycle bells and a theremin, and deeply introspective lyrics to transform rock into a personal, symphonic art form.
And things where obviously volume is necessary, and when people dance, they like volume, comes in on its own. But
in 1963, while Syd Barrett studied surrealism at Cambridge College of Arts, creating dreamlike abstract paintings, the other Pink Floyd members pursued architecture at Regent Street Polytechnic. Restless in Cambridge, Barrett was drawn to London's emerging psychedelic scene, where he reconnected with his friend Roger Waters, joined his band, and helped shape Pink Floyd's identity through their art school influences in music, album artwork, light shows, and stage productions. Syd Barrett was writing songs with playful lyrics when he opened up one of his favorite books, The Wind in the Willows, a 1908 British children's novel. The book would give him inspiration for Pink Floyd's album title, Piper at the Gates of Dawn. One of the songs Barrett is writing is Bike, a whimsical yet unsettling piece that encapsulates Syd Barrett's surreal songwriting style.
I've got a bike, you can ride it if you like, it's got a basket about.
In the song, Syd Barrett's lyrical subject shows a girl his bike, which he borrowed. The girl in question is his girlfriend at the time, Jenny, who he refers to in Lucifer Sam as Jennifer Gentle.
You're the kind of girl that fits in with my world.
The lyrics paint a picture of an eccentric, almost childlike mind, one that delights in oddities and sees magic in the mundane. With each repetition of the chorus, a sudden percussive noise is heard similar to the firing of 2 gunshots. The heavy reverb from these bangs immediately cuts out when the following verse begins. Towards the end of the song, he offers to take her into a room of musical tunes. The other room is giving the impression of turning gears of a bicycle. The cacophony of sound in that room, half the length of the song, is a rare piece of musique concrète in popular music, a type of music composition that utilizes recorded sounds as raw material. An artistic collage of oscillators, clocks, gongs, bells, a violin, and at the ending of the song fades out with a tape loop of geese squawking. The song gives the impression of the kind of visual collage art that Sid might have been developing in art school. The song's final verse takes an abrupt turn, leading into a distorted carnival-like soundscape. This shift transforms Bike from a simple, playful song into something more unsettling, as if the listener has suddenly stepped into a warped psychedelic dream. The final cacophony suggesting a descent into madness, perhaps reflecting Barrett's own fragile mental state at the time. In 1966, Syd Barrett is with his manager Peter Jenner, who is humming to a song he cannot remember the name of. The song will turn out to be Love's Little Red Book. Upon hearing Jennings humming the song, Syd begins to replicate the melody on his guitar. He takes the song to the band as they begin a jam session to complete what will turn out to be Interstellar Overdrive. The song gradually dissolves into a nearly structureless freeform composition, marked only by eerie and unpredictable guitar sounds. Eventually, the band returns to the main theme, repeating it with a slowing tempo and increasingly intensity. Roger Waters will go on to describe it as an abstract piece. The track captures the feeling of a journey into the unknown, both metaphorically and as a psychedelic experience, and literally as if venturing into deep space. This aligns with the artistic ambitions of early Pink Floyd under Syd Barrett's influence, where their music became a canvas for surreal, mind-expanding experiences.
I think the rock music enthusiasts have created probably some of the most exciting music and theatrical events on the planet. I think they're fantastic.
Bring out your dead! Bring out your dead!
Originally, The End was a relatively straightforward folk song about lost love. Jim Morrison wrote it about a breakup with his girlfriend in 1965 while he was at UCLA Film School. At the time, the Doors were performing as the house band at the London Fog Club in Los Angeles, where they experimented with extended improvisations. As the band grew more comfortable stretching their songs into long, free-flowing performances, The End transformed into something much more expansive. By the time they moved to Whiskey A Go-Go in 1966, the song had taken on a hypnotic, almost ritualistic quality, while Morrison treated it as a trance-like performance. During one infamous show, he launched into Oedipal monologue. The disturbing passage shocked the audience and led to the Doors being fired from the Whiskey, but it also cemented The End as something far more than just another song. It was a theatrical piece of work. The interplay between the musicians created a sense of gradual, creeping tension, as if the song is leading the listener into an escapable dream.
This is the end, beautiful friend.
Shortly past the midpoint of a nearly 12-minute long album version, the song enters into a spoken word section.
Killer awoke before dawn. He put his boots on. He took a face from the ancient gallery and he walked on down the hallway, baby.
In a 1969 interview, Jim said, "Every time I hear that song, it meant something else to me. I really didn't know what I was trying to say. It just started out as a simple goodbye song, probably to a girl, but I could see how it could be a goodbye to a kind of childhood." Ray Manzarek describes, he was giving voice in a rock and roll setting to the Oedipus complex, at the time a widely discussed tendency in Freudian psychology. He wasn't saying he wanted to do that to his own mom and dad. He was reenacting a bit of Greek drama. It was theater.
The end of night, sweet.
Art washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life. Lou Reed. The Velvet Underground and Nico in 1967 is a deeply avant-garde and experimental take on rock, incorporating dissonance, poetic abstraction, and radical production techniques, a departure from the polished sound of mainstream rock, embracing the avant-garde. Venus in Furs stands as a hypnotic, unsettling exploration of desire and power, drawing inspiration from the 19th century novella of the same name. The song's title references a world of erotic obsession and submission, mirroring the band's fascination with taboo subjects in the darker corners of human nature.
Shiny, shiny, shiny boots of leather.
Andy Warhol's fascination with glamour, decay, and the fleeting nature of fame is weaved throughout the album, evoking endless cycles of excess and disillusionment, capturing the emptiness behind New York's art and fashion elite, mirroring Warhol's factory scene. Although released in '67, the album was recorded in '66 and held for a year before releasing. Warhol's business manager Paul Morrissey said of the delay, Verve MGM didn't know what to do with Velvet Underground and Nico because it was so peculiar. They did not release it for almost a year. Tom Wilson only brought the album to me because of Nico. He saw no talent in Lou Reed. In 1982, Brian Eno said, while the album sold only 30,000 copies in its early years, everyone who bought one of those 30,000 copies started a band. Phil May and Dick Taylor were attending Sidcup Art College along with Keith Richards when they later formed the Pretty Things, after Taylor left the newly formed Rolling Stones. The Pretty Things' final album, SF Sorrow, in 1968, is often considered a key early rock opera blueprint. The album predates The Who's Tommy, released in '69. Unlike standard rock albums of the time, SF Sorrow is a fully realized concept album, telling the life story of its protagonist, Sebastian F. Sorrow, from birth to disillusionment. While many late '60s albums embrace utopian themes, SF Sorrow explores war, heartbreak, alienation, and madness, making it one of rock's first psychological odysseys. The album unfolds like a novel, with each track acting as a chapter in Sorrow's tragic life. This storytelling format will become a staple of art rock, influencing prog rock in the '70s. While much of the album features psychedelic rock elements, there are certain songs that exemplify experimental nature and conceptual depth.
SF Sorrow is born.
SF Sorrow is Born is the opening to the album, introducing the concept that underpins the entire work. The blending of psychedelic rock with operatic ambitions and orchestral flourishes showcases the art rock's drive for complex and artistic exploration. The mournful tone of the song, paired with its sonic experimentation, reflects the art rock ethos of art for art's sake.
In the 60s, the rock...
Zappa's Who Are the Brain Police from Freak Out in '66 is one of the most unsettling and avant-garde songs of the '60s, a surreal critique of conformity and societal control. The song stands out as an eerie dystopian nightmare within the Mothers of Invention's debut album, which was already a bold statement against commercial pop music and mainstream culture.
Who are the brain police?
According to Zappa, Who Are the Brain Police was written in a single sitting late one night, and even he found it disturbing. He later described it as one of the most frightening songs I've ever written. It emerged from his deep skepticism of American consumer culture and the ways in which people are manipulated by external forces, whether political, corporate, or cultural.
Ready? One, two, three.
Who Are the Brain Police remains one of the most radical tracks on the album, a testament to Zappa's ability to blend social commentary with an avant-garde musical chaos. It was a warning against blind conformity, disguised as a surrealistic nightmare, and it set the stage for Zappa's lifelong mission to challenge authority through music.
Well, the Knife used to be known as the Nice, because we were big fans of the Nice. Although, Keith Emerson was associated with some of the sort of more extreme departures of prog rock on the keyboard. Then it was a sort of hip underground band that Hendrix wanted to join.
The Nice's album Ars Longa Vita Brevis in '68 itself is a Latin phrase meaning art is long, life is short, symbolized the breaking down of barriers between music genres.
So, if one accepts this as a universal situation, one could say that there is nothing guaranteed in the whole universe. Bennett expressed this as the idea of the dramatic universe. Another way of expressing it would be, the way I express it, the law of discontinuity of straight lines. Nothing moves from A to B in a straight line. Something always changes, always deflects. So this is a slightly less sophisticated version of Gurdjieff's Law of Seven, or a bit more sophisticated version of Murphy's Law, that if it can go wrong, it will.
King Crimson's In the Court of the Crimson King in '69 was a landmark in progressive rock, merging symphonic grandeur with avant-garde experimentation. One of its most haunting tracks, Epitaph, serves as a meditation on fate, uncertainty, and the collapse of civilization. The song title itself, referring to an inscription on a tombstone, suggests a lament for a world on the brink, mirroring the late '60s anxieties about war, technological progress, and the fragility. Unlike conventional rock albums, The Who's Tommy elevates to a theatrical, story-driven, and musically sophisticated form, incorporating elements of high art while maintaining its rock foundation. Tommy is structured as a continuous narrative telling the story of a boy who becomes deaf, dumb, and blind due to trauma, but later finds enlightenment through pinball and spirituality. The album takes the listener on a cohesive musical journey, much like an opera or classical suite. The story's philosophical and psychological themes, including trauma, spiritual awakening, and the search for identity, align with art rock's emphasis on intellectual and conceptual depth. Tommy showcases symphonic structures in its composition, with recurring motifs and themes that appear throughout the album, much like classical music. The album experiments with dynamics, shifting between acoustic ballads in 1921, powerful rock anthems on Pinball Wizard, and psychological interludes on Underture. Later, Tommy was even adapted into a film in '75 and a Broadway musical in 1993, reinforcing its artistic and theatrical ambition.
Ever since I was a young boy, I played the silver ball from Soho. He plays my intuition, that digit counters fall, that deaf, dumb, and blind kid. Shot plays a million-pound ball.
Well, I hope you enjoyed taking a look back at these fascinating pioneers of art rock songs and stories. Check out these videos linked here and in the description for more. Don't forget to become a member to access the uncensored stories ad-free. Be sure to like and leave a comment. See you next time.
Oh.